Thank you, Sophie and Vincent, for inviting me. And I'm very excited to be able to share the first results of a new line of research I'm developing. And this new line of research examines whether heuristics, so very simple decision rules, that's the key, simplicity, whether those allow to tell lie from truth. And of course, this goes against the current trend of coming with ever more complex algorithms and machine learning algorithms. So I'll have to explain why I think this might work. And I'll do that with an example. So just last month, we had a bit of a political crisis here in the Netherlands because our prime minister was accused of lying. This is, of course, not the first time that a politician got accused of lying, but this installed quite some uproar. It started off with some information that was leaked in the press, and the prime minister was confronted with this information. He was accused of basically sidelining a political rival, and his defense was, I have no memory of this. I can't remember. I don't know. And this sparked quite a debate in the media, but also in the chamber and also in street. Everybody was talking about it. Is this actually true or is this a lie? And also quite some experts were asked. Experts from legal psychology, forensic psychology, and some of the experts you know, and they were asked, is this amnesia authentic or was he indeed lying? Now, interestingly enough, these experts had widely varying opinions. Some of those experts said, yes, indeed, it's quite plausible that he misremembered or not remembered at all, whereas other experts said that it's quite clear that he was lying. And there was also one expert who said that maybe he didn't know he was lying. But apart from who's right of these experts, that's not the point here, and also not that they differ, but why they differ. And if you look at the arguments they use, you see that they use different arguments. And I think that boils down to why deception detection is so difficult, because these experts struggle basically with the same issue, with the same problem that lay people have. We know that ordinary people are very bad at lie detection, but also experts struggle with the vast amount of reasons, the vast amount of cues that you can use. Some of the meta-analysis have shown there's 150 or even more cues. So how on earth are you going to select from all of those cues, all of those reasons, all of those things that you can consider, make a judgment on that, then weigh that information and combine it into a deception judgment? So that's, I think, one of the key reasons why deception detection is so difficult. And it's not just lay people and not just experts who struggle with this, computers do. So we've seen it in our own line of research where we tried working with machine learning approaches, with artificial intelligence. What we saw is that those algorithms, complex algorithms that combine not just 10 or 100, but they can combine hundreds of cues to deception, that they do fairly well in a given data set. In a given data set, you can train those models and they will allow you to tell lie from truth. The problem arises with prediction. Once you move to a new context, once you move to novel data, unseen data, truly unseen data, then those machines also struggle. In one of our examples on intentions, we saw that despite cross-validation, our algorithm was 80% accurate, but moving to novel data, it dropped to 60%. So maybe, rather than coming with even more complex algorithms, maybe we should take a step back and look for more simple rules of thumb. And I know this is counterintuitive. There's quite some research on this, mostly by Gigi Renzer, and quite some examples from medicine, from business, and other fields where indeed this seems to be working, particularly for predictions that are very, very hard, like deception detection. So just one example, I'll give one or two. Northpoint, they developed an algorithm to predict reoffending. And this is an algorithm that's been developed in the US and that's been used on millions of offenders, and it does better than chance. So this algorithm uses 137 cues, and combining those cues with a complex algorithm allows to predict reoffense rates above chance level. But interestingly enough, a novel paper in Science Advances showed that just 2 cues did equally well. And you might be interested to know the cues. The cues, they were, how old is this person and how many offenses did he have? And those 2 cues, just this simple 2 cues, allowed to make a prediction as good as a North Pointy complex algorithm. The same holds for trying to predict who will win Wimbledon. You can ask experts. You can have lots of data on all the players involved, give them to a machine and come up with a prediction. Or you can ask people in the street, which player do you know? And apparently, just asking which player do you know and just counting the player that is mentioned most often does equally well as what experts have to say and these machine learning algorithms have to say. So again, maybe less is more, and maybe this less is more approach might also apply to deception detection. That's at least also what a recent theory, the focal account by Chris Street, also predicts. So this is the background for which we started a pilot study. And in this pilot study, we took a bunch of statements and gave them to judges. And so these judges needed to evaluate those statements. The statements came from a previous study in which undergrads told what they did in the last 15 minutes. Either they said honestly what they did, they just talked to a friend, drank some coffee, went to the library, or they said the same thing, but actually they had committed a mock crime. So we gave those statements to some judges, and they evaluated these statements, either allowing them to use any cue they liked, right? So we asked them, is this an honest or a dishonest statement? You can use any cue you like, combine them, weigh them, whatever you like. Or instead, we asked them to rely on a single cue. And we asked them to the simple question, is this statement verifiable? And you might know that this is indeed a diagnostic cue to deception. And I was quite happy with these results. And I'm not just happy, I was also a bit puzzled because they were almost too good to be true. So what we found is you see the average judgments here for the dishonest and the honest statements. And you see that when people judge deception directly and they can use any possible cue, there's no difference between the dishonest and honest statements. So people cannot tell lie from truth, even though they're allowed to use any cue they like. And when instead you make it much more simple and you only ask, is this statement verifiable? We find like true differences, and not just differences, those differences were very large. So to me, this came a bit as a shock. So I thought, wow, if this simplicity is replicable, then we might really have something. So that's indeed what we did. We did some replication research trying to see whether this is a real phenomenon. And also I should stress that we don't think that verifiability is Pinocchio's nose. It's just a cue, it's a diagnostic cue, but there's probably others, such as written in detail. So in the follow-up study, we had more judges, and also we randomly assigned them either to use any possible cue they like, to use verifiability, like in the pilot, or to use riches in detail, asking them, how detailed is this statement? And again, what we found is that people are generally bad at lie detection. So when they didn't use any cue they like, they weren't able to tell lie from truth. But when they were instructed to rely just on one cue, whether it was verifiability or detailedness, we found very large lie-truth differences. And I stress large because, of course, that's what you need if you want to go to applications. Moreover, what we saw is that we didn't just have large lie-truth differences, but interestingly enough, we also had people code those statements word for word using state-of-the-art content coding. And we saw that these very simple judgments did actually better than the very complex content coding of the statements. So perhaps if things turn out to be replicable, what we might need to do is switch from seeking optimal classification, like the highest possible accuracy, because we know that those algorithms are vulnerable to overfitting and maybe don't generalize to new data sets. We might settle with a little lower accuracy, but something that's robust, something that generalizes across samples. And so the next step, what we want to do is take this a step further, applying to different data sets. So maybe you also had an email from me asking your data, because I want to apply the same ID now to other data, and also seeing how far we can take it with other cues that have been shown in meta-analysis to be diagnostic. And if you like this idea, you can vote for us using this link, and that gives us a chance to win £10,000 to continue this line of research. And finally, of course, what I hope, not tomorrow, but in a few years, is that indeed, if this turns out to be something real, is that this might lead to simple decision rules, which are quick and efficient, that don't require any coding or technology, and therefore might be more robust and usable for practitioners. So that's what I have to say about this fresh new data set.